I'm Alastair Bruce. I'm also Fitzalan, Pursuivant of Arms Extraordinary, one of the Queen's heralds. In this series, we'll be looking at the fascinating and ancient titles of Britain, from the princes of royal blood to the strange appointments that have existed over the centuries. These are the stories of the men and women who are at Her Majesty's service. A sheriff's badge, a sheriff's uniform. In America, sheriffs tamed the Wild West and still patrol the mean streets of Los Angeles.
The people that we come in contact with, they are the criminal element, and we go into very hostile situations sometimes. We go out and preserve the peace and enforce the laws.
Deputy Deeds may look typically American, but he actually has a direct link to the Dark Ages and to this man. Saxon England was divided into shires which were controlled by the King's lawman or reeve, hence Shire Reeve, which became sheriff. The English colonists took this post with them to the New World. The things we take for granted often have hidden stories to tell. In America, the county sheriff is elected, but in England, the High Sheriff is pricked. With the Queen's signature, this is how they choose sheriffs in England and Wales. It's 20 feet long, there are 150 names. The Queen chooses each of them by pricking 1 in 3 of those names with a bodkin. Why a bodkin? Well, so the story goes. Elizabeth I was out in the garden doing her embroidery when the list arrived. She didn't have anything to write with, so she used one of her embroidery needles, or bodkins. And sovereigns have used bodkins ever since. These days, the Queen always chooses the first name on the list, and this year she pricked the name of Michael Moore-Molyneux to be Sheriff of Surrey. So how long has the family actually been here?
Ever since it was built in 1562.
And who was it built for?
Queen Elizabeth visited, and she said the smaller house that she saw was not meet for her to tarry at. And then Loseley plus another wing was built, and she stayed here.
So the whole thing was done just for her?
Yes.
So you're not the first High Sheriff in this family?
No, I'm the number 6, and number 2, Sir William Moore, his painting is right behind you on the wall up there.
So did he build the house?
He was a builder of the house, and...
He was the one who Queen Elizabeth came to visit?
That's right.
She was pretty demanding, and I suppose being made High Sheriff was the only way she could compensate.
Absolutely, and when she came here, she said that the house was filthy, and that in actual fact she'd bring her own staff in future.
The story of the Moore-Molyneux encapsulates the way the feudal system worked. The aristocracy depended on the patronage of the crown to give them wealth and status. And as we'll see, that led to some strange titles and bewildering traditions that date back to this muddy shoreline along the south coast of England. In the year 495, a Saxon chief named Cerdic landed here with his warriors. This was no raiding party. Cerdic was here to stay. He defeated the local tribes and founded the Kingdom of Wessex. But there's a link today with Cerdic's landing here 1,500 years ago. His direct descendant still occupies the throne as Queen Elizabeth II. And recently, Her Majesty revived all this history by bringing back a title that had last been heard of on the battlefield of Hastings, when she created her son, Prince Edward, Earl of Wessex. This document brings the whole of the history of Wessex back to life.
Essentially, yes. This is the letters patent. This is the document which is basically given by the Queen. And here it says, resurrecting the title of Earl of Wessex.
Under the Great Seal of Elizabeth II, the Queen has given her son one of the most ancient of royal titles. The last Earl of Wessex was King Harold, who died at Hastings in 1066. When William the Conqueror prepared the land register of England called the Domesday Book, the title Earl of Wessex had disappeared. It ended when a Norman arrow struck Harold in the eye.
Quite a document. There's a lot of history in there. Every title has a story attached to it. Every title has a history. Mostly it's family histories, and most of those families go right back to Doomsday. I mean, there are some families that have inherited titles from Doomsday. The extraordinary thing about this title is that it actually predates Doomsday and has had no history in between.
Long after England had been unified into a single kingdom, the tribal feuds of Scotland's most inhospitable landscape continued.
Apart from the kilt, what most people think of about Scotland are its beautiful mountains, rivers and glens. But for the people who lived here in the Dark Ages, it was a dire place. They had to raise food out of poor land. They had to deal with atrocious weather. And they always had to be ready for the possibility of an attack from clans across the hills.
One of the last great tribes of Europe is headed by my cousin, the chief of the Macintosh family. Called the Macintosh of Macintosh, he's the guardian of clan traditions. Macintoshes are now spread throughout the world, and the Macintosh believes it's his duty to keep the family spirit alive. They have an internet site, and there are still regular clan gatherings where tales of Macintosh battles are retold. But the story began here around the shores of Loch Moy near Inverness many centuries ago, and the island provided security from constant raiding parties.
But life out on this island can't have been very easily sustained, because frankly there wasn't much food.
Well, of course, the chief would have his residence on the island, and there would also be a garrison for the men, which at one point numbered 400 men living on the 6-acre island that we'll see. And of course the villagers would be able to go there as well for protection.
And it's a brilliant idea because of course it's incredibly safe here.
It is. There was one occasion in 1422 when a family we were fighting against called the Commons decided that they were going to flood the island. They dammed it up, so hoping that the water would rise. And so what happened was a brave Macintosh soul